Hello and welcome to the unofficial Sage podcast. I don't I don't know what episode we're on now, but we've done quite a few, right guys?
Enough. I think we've done enough. By the way,
Enough.
you missed the emphasis on unofficial, but that's okay, Emily.
Yes, yeah. I
This
don't
is
I
your
don't do
first
such
intro at the top.
such a good
Go ahead.
job as you, Doug, but thanks for passing the mantle. Well, welcome all listeners. We are excited to have you. We are having a very new and special episode today. We have a guest on. So it's just me, Matt, and Doug, and Erik Neilssen. So Erik, hi and welcome.
Hi, Emily. Thanks so much for having me. Really excited to be a guest on this very special episode.
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Erik Neilssen. I am a senior account executive at DataBlend. I just recently celebrated my 4-year anniversary with DataBlend, and I wear a couple of different hats on the sales front. I handle a good chunk of our direct business inbound. I deal with our CAS/SIAP packaging, and then I also am the key correspondent for our DataFlow relationship with Sage Intacct.
Oh, we'll have
Okay.
to talk about what the DataFlow relationship is. But Erik, you're in Boston, right?
I'm in Keene, New Hampshire, actually. It's like a large stone's throw from Boston, but it's a drivable distance.
So I saw you in Boston recently. How long did it take you to get to the venue we were at?
Oh, Matt, are you just? I think you're bringing this up because you know I was late to that. But
I wasn't even going to say anything.
yeah, unfortunately I got
You know what,
stuck in.
Erik, before you answer that, just understand that Matt is far and away the most tardy to every single one of these recordings.
Yeah.
So
All
just
right.
know that ahead of
Good to
time.
know. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that, Doug. That day, I think it took me 3 hours and 15 minutes to get to the final
Wow.
location. It took me an hour and 50 minutes to get to Boston. It took me like an hour and 15 to get from entering Boston to the final location. So the Boston traffic snagged me hard on a Thursday afternoon.
Well, now I feel even more like I owe you, because that's a pretty big ride. You co-sponsored the event with me. We were able to get together with some of the colleagues from Sage, and it was a well attended, fun event. We got to chat for a long time. I think we closed down our reservation instead. So it was very good to see you.
Absolutely. It was great to co-sponsor that event. It was great to get, it's always great in this age today to get FaceTime with the people you work with. And it was
Yeah.
truly a really fun event. So yeah, thank you for that opportunity.
And we're gonna do another one, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's my plan. I'm a senior account executive though, so I say yes to everything.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, you and Matt
Okay,
have that in
let's-
common. Yeah, you both commit to things, and now you're doing it publicly on air, so that's fun.
Yes.
So, kind of just bring this thing full circle, Erik. Again, thanks for joining us. This is exciting to really have an expert in the industry here joining us. And on your personal intro, by the way, you missed some of the key ones like favorite color and social security number, but we'll hit those at the end of the podcast here. But just for the listeners, want to kind of recap what the goal of this thing is, because Erik, I love that in your intro you didn't sell. This is not a sales podcast, which is great. But I think it's important for people to really understand, number one, who DataBlend is, what the relationship is with Sage. DataFlow was mentioned, what that looks like a little bit in more detail. But more importantly, why your piece in the Sage ecosystem is important and why the listener should really care about any of this stuff. So, Erik, do you want to just give that brief 50,000 foot, we're not even going 10,000 foot, I mean 50,000 foot overview of DataBlend, who you guys are, what you're doing in the ecosystem with Sage, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, Doug. And I wasn't going to say this on this call because sometimes it doesn't always hit correctly, or on this podcast. Excuse me. There's the salesperson in me, right? I'm on screen, so I'm on a call. But uh, at heart, I hate sales. To be honest with you, I almost didn't take this job 4 years ago because I had a sales job out of college and I hated it. I gained a lot of weight. I lost a lot of hair. I didn't like the pressure that came with it. I didn't like some of the dishonesty on my then sales team. And I always had a bad taste in my mouth about sales, even though I have a lot of the skills set that are good for it. So I think that's what makes me a good fit for DataBlend and why I've been there for 4 years. And I promise I'm going to jump right into what DataBlend's all about. But what I love about being a senior account executive at DataBlend is I don't have to be salesy, right? At the heart of what we're doing is solving a friction point for customers, and we're solving problems. And that is something that makes it easy for me to turn on my computer every day and turn it off every night, is knowing that I'm helping the Office of Finance and Accounting make their life a little easier. So I think that's important to say, because it's an important part about why I'm here today. But about DataBlend, and I think that's actually a good segue, is DataBlend is the ETL tool. That's extract, transform, and load, for anyone who doesn't hear that acronym all the time, of data, of financial data for the Office of Finance and Accounting. So if you have data anywhere in your system and you're using a system for a business use case that wasn't up to finance and accounting, what we do is we make it easy to get that data from one system to another on an automated basis, right? And we take away the Excel gymnastics, and we take away the manual work that is normally needed for getting data from one to the other. And we get to do it at a pretty affordable price point, which is what you're going to hear me talk about with DataBlend a lot, is that what we work to offer through everything we do is peace of mind. Is we're not doing our job if the Office of Finance and Accounting doesn't have peace of mind that our tool is doing what it's supposed to be doing in the background.
So I have a
Well, like
question,
that,
Doug. Should we tell him the
Yes.
rule about you're going to do it?
Yeah, you beat me to the punch there, but
Go
just so
ahead,
you're
go ahead.
aware, Eric.
Did I break a rule
Emily-
already?
No,
not
you
yet.
didn't break a rule.
No.
You actually followed a rule, shockingly, without even knowing it existed.
If you break this rule, Matt will just take it up. So it's fine.
Yes.
Okay.
Emily,
Oh.
Matt, and myself have a friendly arrangement that if we use an acronym, we have to explain what it stands for
Okay.
in
All right.
detail. And if we don't, it's $50 into the general pool, and we're still figuring out what we're going to do with that pool, which is fun. But it keeps us on track and makes sure the listeners don't get lost as much as we possibly can. So any acronym, you're immune from the rule, which is good. But any acronyms that the three of us don't explain is $50 into the pot, and it's a running total, a running tally. So do your best to explain your acronyms. But yes, for all the listeners, Erik is 100% immune from that rule. But
Emily,
Yes.
I have an idea.
Oh, what's your idea?
So Doug is technically the host and really doesn't use acronyms ever. So he already has one step ahead of us. So he actually should have to own any guest that breaks the rule, and he has to pay for their
Oh, well, I can say Erik is my friend. So just give me a wink, and I mean, I'm sure I can tell Erik to not explain his acronyms.
I could go
There
from
we
no
go.
acronyms to all acronyms real fast.
So yeah, I think Matt, love the idea. We'll put it in the maybe pile. But for this episode, in all future episodes, we will keep the existing rules as they are. So that's perfect. Any guest is immune. So Erik, appreciate the kind of background on DataBlend, all that fun stuff, and I love the fact that you're not super salesy, which is great. Sales background myself, and I hate it myself, so I understand kind of where you're coming from that mindset. But when did the partnership between DataBlend and Sage really come together?
That's a great question. So I can't talk about the partnership between Sage and DataBlend without talking about my CEO, David Firth. I've been with DataBlend for 4 years. I've had the pleasure of working with David over the last 3.5, and he's a wicked smart guy, wicked talented, and brings a lot of experience to the table. And I've learned a lot from him. And what he brings to the table, besides all the experience, is that before he worked at DataBlend, he was one of the top resellers of Sage Intacct through Leap the Pond and Act 2. And so he brought with him a really intimate relationship with the Sage Intacct community, which really opened up a lot of doors for us to build this robust connection to Sage Intacct. So I'm going to use an acronym here, API, Application Program Interface, right? And today, 82% of our customers are using us to connect to Sage Intacct through this API, as it is our most robust API connection. And we've invested in that. And because of that, we've become, we started as a marketplace partner, and the Sage Intacct community was able to reach out to us when they had an integration issue and wanted to talk to us. But the higher ups at Sage made it clear to David Firth that integration was always going to be something that a solution that needed to be solved for Sage Intacct, right? And that they wanted their customers to get the most out of their platform. And so we were able to really take that to a more intimate relationship, right? I don't know if I should be using the word intimate too often, but a
Let it fly.
closer,
Anything
Eric,
goes.
more
worthy.
synergistic relationship, I'll say, more synergistic
Sure.
relationship with the ISV relationship, which has led us to the data flows.
Well, I want to mention just for listeners, Leap the Pond was a leading Sage Intacct partner. Got acquired by Act Two, if I have my history correct, which was ended up being many years the number one Sage
Right.
Intacct partner.
Yep.
That got acquired by Baker Tilly.
Yep.
Yes.
And now with all of that infrastructure that was built from Leap the Pond into Act Two into Baker Tilly's now putting stuff out to marketplace like SaaS Intelligence by Baker Tilly, which I think was originally came out of that Leap the Pond and Act Two combination. So I thought that was interesting, kind of in where that history came from.
Absolutely. I mean, so you're speaking to the point that David Firth's influence in the Sage ecosystem goes further than what we're doing today. And again, I'm just lucky enough that I get to work with them.
And I like how you said goes further than what you're doing today. If you could just lay out your entire product roadmap on this and just kind of spoil it for everybody, that might be helpful. For all I'm sure you have the ability to do so. But
I mean, I could talk all day, and then I could let my product manager listen and make it happen. Which it's funny enough, but that's often how it happens, right? Is our roadmap is pretty much dictated by what our customers, our prospects, and our partners need us to do. When I started 4 years ago, I was the 5th employee. We mainly connected to QBO and Adaptive, and we had about 100 customers, right? And now today, 4 years later, we have 800 customers. We connect to hundreds of applications, and our staff has grown considerably. And that's just to say, hey, I like to talk about that, not to brag, but to talk about how excited I am to be part of that growth journey. But also, I like to talk about how, 82% of our customers are using us to connect to Sage Intacct, and it is the most robust API. But at one point, we weren't even connecting to Sage Intacct, right? So by a customer coming to us saying they needed to connect to Sage, that's how that relationship started. And so we're also very good at doing new things, which, again, here's that peace of mind thing, is it gives users of DataBlend that peace of mind that when you use us, we're going to help you get your data from whatever system you're using into the system that you need to use in Sage Intacct in this instance, right?
If I have a question on that, is it just the fact of being originally in the ecosystem for David Firth that Sage Intacct has become the number one? Does it have to do anything with Sage Intacct's API itself as being more robust than some of the other ones? Can you give us a little insight into that?
It's a little bit of everything. I think if I think back to the history, is there was some really good synergy of David Firth joining while we were already kind of knocking on the door of Sage Intacct and having customers bring us towards Sage Intacct that helped, but definitely things move faster because of that. And then, for sure, Sage Intacct has a very robust API and has a lot of things mapped out. And again, because of the relationship, we're able to work with them to make sure that we understand how things are mapped out, right? So it gives us an even stronger ability to bring a solution, right? And that goes to the other thing that facilitates the growth that we've had, is that our development team comes out with 2 releases every month, and with every release we're releasing a new connection, but we're also maintaining the APIs that we're already building, right? And we're improving on the APIs that we're already building, so we're adding endpoints, and none of that comes at the cost of our customers. And that sounds a little salesy, but it's really about our investment in our tool, right? And offering a tool that is as robust as it can be. And the second we stop evolving as an integration tool is the second we start losing our value. And why are we in the game in the first place, right? So it's that ability to build out anything that's available to the API that has led us to be this robust connection with Sage Intacct.
So, if I've said it once, I've said it a million times, but Sage Intacct is a best in class solution. So customers listening, whoever is listening to this podcast, having integrations into Sage Intacct is a necessary part of Sage Intacct, because Intacct is not trying to be everything to everyone, right? We're not trying to be an expense management solution. We're not trying to be a CRM. So having those connections to other systems is going to create that environment of automation, of AI, of less manual work. And Erik has helped a lot of my clients do this.
On that note, Eric, We keep on talking about your partnership with Sage, and you mentioned data flows earlier. Can
Mhm.
we talk a little bit about that relationship in more depth? Because I think so far we might have kind of just scratched the surface and might not be as obvious to people.
Sure,
And
for
and
sure.
Eric, I'm gonna cut you off right before you even answer that. Love the question, Matt. You beat me to the punch. But for anyone who's actually watching, I know we have a lot of listeners. Anyone actually watching, you'll notice in Eric's screen, I see some awards behind you that
Oh
look
yeah.
interesting. And before we get back, I want to get into data flow. But Eric, please tell me, what am I looking at behind you?
So what you're looking behind you, they're called Josie Awards. They might look like Oscars, but they're not. And they are for work I did in community theater. So I am a theater major. I went to Hunter College in Manhattan, and I specialized in directing. And then some years after I graduated college, I had gotten away from theater, so I got invited back into the community theater scene in Queens, New York, where I was born and raised. And I got really into directing at that period. And so those awards are for different shows that I've directed over the years. Little Women, Spam-A-Lot, and Lend Me a Tenor. Oh no, sorry, Nonsense. And then Noises Off was one of my last shows I produced. Not produced, directed. So I do a little bit of musical, a little bit of comedy, a little bit of everything.
That, that,
And did I hear that you're also a ordained officiant?
I am.
Yeah.
Man, Emily, you did your research. Yeah, I
Doing the
am.
research.
I am an ordained, or I'm ordained with the Universal Life Church. In my grandfather on my father's side was a Lutheran pastor, so I guess I'm kind of falling in with the family business a little bit there. And then a fun fact about me is before I became with DataBlend, I was actually a union window cleaner in New York City, and I used to wash windows in the sky rises over Times Square, which is very appropriate for someone who's such a theater major, right? And my grandfather on my mom's side, my mom's dad, was a window cleaner, so I have done a little bit of both of my grandfather's trades there, and I
So
have
what?
officiated 5 weddings so far.
So
Yep.
you direct on Monday, clean on Tuesday, officiate on Wednesday, and sell Data Blend on Thursday?
Only if I could still do that. I think in my 20s, that was my lifestyle. When I was in my 20s, I was definitely wearing a lot of hats in one day. Now it's mostly, I do mostly data blend. Um,
Okay.
Well,
but it's
you've
always, you
inspired
can't,
me.
you take the boy away from the theater. You can never take the theater out of the boy.
I'm
well,
gonna
Love
I'm
it.
gonna
what's interesting, and I really love the theater. I don't think anybody here knows this. I have an aunt and uncle are both theater actors here in DC, and have done it for 20, 30 years. I grew up going to theater, and it's such a opportunity as a kid to. And I don't know, Eric, if you have children or not, but I just remember how much impact that had for me as a little kid, get to experience those kind of things. So, very cool.
Yeah. No, I
it
do have a
isn't.
daughter, but she's only 2, so she's not quite ready yet. But she is a performer. She's already a ham at 2, so I definitely think she's going to be prime for the theater. But my mom got me into it because I used to watch movies and then I would recite the entire movie for like family entertainment. Like I go from opening credits to closing credits, and she's like, "We got to get you some kind of agent or something. There's a life here." I didn't need to eat, drink, and sleep it enough to make it to be a movie star, but it definitely filled a passion for me for a long time. So.
Awesome.
So you're not a movie star. That's what I.
I'm not. I'm
That's what I
not.
took. Okay, got it. I just want to make sure because we're gonna shift this entire episode. That
I become the
I
headliner for a whole other reason, right?
apologize. I took us off track that time. Usually it's Matt or Emily that I'm usually the one who tries to keep us on track, but that was my sleep up there because.
Well, to be fair, I think it
I'm
was all of you. I think you all kind of joined
Yeah.
in and took off on
Well,
the journey. So
Hold us
You're right.
accountable. I love it.
we share a little. I'll have to put my directing awards up behind me next. It'll be really easy process. So back to Matt's initial question. Data flow. It's been talked about a little bit. Do you want to give us that background, Eric? What is data flow?
sure. So data flow, on the simplest terms, is data blend available on Sage Paper. And basically, one data flow is a connection to Sage Intacct, Sage Intacct in one system with the ability to move 3 workflows, right, or 3 objects, say like customer, vendor, invoice, between one system and the other system. And it's really new. It's a very young program. We started it the conversation started at the end of last year, and at the beginning, at the outset, it was really supposed to be about HubSpot and Sage Intacct, and we built these wizard functionalities to bring data from HubSpot to Sage Intacct. But while we were getting ready to roll it out at Transform this last year, it was kind of decided that it made sense for us to make it a little more far-reaching than that. And so you're allowed to use a DataFlow to really connect to any system, and it has really opened up the doors. And over the last 3 or 4 months, I've gotten to work with VARs and Sage account executives who are getting to have a much more empowered conversation with their customers about integration, and remove a lot of the friction that integration could bring into a process of looking at what software you want to use and what softwares you are using, and how do you bridge that gap.
And what I find really impactful here, at least from customer journey and things of that nature, is with this partnership, it makes it much more easier for the customer to engage with and have a plan to utilize a product like this. Because before, it was up to the implementation partner to try to bring in a third party to try to solve this relationship, and now it's really kind of more of a, what I would say, in the community approach. Erik, what have you seen on your end from that side?
Absolutely. I mentioned before, like, the synergistic nature of it, right? Is if when you're seeing, and we kind of had that experience, right? We were not a marketplace partner, then we became a marketplace partner, and then this relationship has continued to strengthen and strengthen. And one of the benefits of coming to the table as a product that has this ISV relationship with Sage Intacct and being on Sage Intacct paper is the customer doesn't look at you as much as a third party, right? They look at DataBlend as a Sage-backed integration tool that Sage has confidence is going to be able to improve value of what the customer is getting out of Sage Intacct. And that's what got us excited about this relationship. Is in every way, shape, and form, it's a healthy relationship, right? It's a health relationship for Sage, it's a healthy relationship for DataBlend, and it's a healthy relationship for the end user, because together we're improving the value for the end user. Emily, go ahead. I'm sorry, Matt. Go ahead.
I just want to mention, just in case listeners, it's not obvious, when he says on Sage paper, Sage gray labels. We talked about this in another episode. Gray labels with DataBlend and sells DataBlend on their contract. So it's a 1 point of contract for the customer, not 2 different contracts.
And what is the name? Is it DataFlows powered by DataBlend? Is that the
No,
official name?
it's
Am I
just
making that up?
DataFlows. It's a product that is
Okay.
that it's DataFlows, right? And it's very simple and doesn't need to get more complicated than that. And it's just it's a product that's available on the Sage price book, and through that you get integration.
Yeah. So, kind of going off script here.
I was going to say, I rehearsed, and I'm glad I'm a theater guy, because this is not going like anything I rehearsed. I'm glad. I think it's even better and very organic, and
Yes.
I feel like I've set the bar high for whatever guest comes after me, which is, I think, a great
Oh,
way to start. I don't know, that wasn't
yes.
very humble. I've been doing a really good job of being humble until this point. Now I shot myself in the foot.
But I do have a question. So we've kind of explained what a data flow is, and it's on Sage paper. But what does
Mhm.
the implementation of this look like?
Well, that's a great question. Is it what the thing I like to tell all of our customers and anyone who asks about DataBlend, right, is that at heart we're a product, right? And I mentioned before peace of mind. I've mentioned a couple times. I'm going to mention it again. Is what we want is that the customer has peace of mind that our solution is going to do what it says it's going to do. That it's going to be easy to use. That it's going to be easy to get support for it, and it's going to be easy to set up. So those release cycles I mentioned before, where we release new connections and we release updates to our connections, one of the other things we do is we release improvements to the implementation process, right? We release these things called wizards. We release templates, and we take common workflows that we see many of our customers using, and we try to come up with streamlined ways to implement those use cases. So when you subscribe to DataBlend, you're not just getting the experience of all of our team, you're getting the experience of our 800 customers and our experience with our 800 customers, to make sure that you have an expedited implementation, that you have a streamlined solution that is going to be easy to support and is going to do what you expect it to do. Specifically around implementation, today we have an implementation team that does some of that. Sage Intacct is taking on some of the work, but then we also rely on our community of trusted VARs who are certified implementers of DataBlend. And so the very same person that you may be buying the data flow from will be the person that can implement DataBlend for you. But it's not a very complicated process. It doesn't involve a lot of IT or resources in general from the customer. Really, all they need to do is have credentials to the systems that we're integrating, have sample files of data that we're integrating, and then have an idea of what they want the integration to do that's going to be reflective in a statement of work. I was going to say SOW, and I was like, let me save myself the time and just say statement of work. And
Nailed it.
then our team goes off and builds it, or whoever is implementing it, right? Whether it's our team or Sage or a VAR who can also implement, a certified implementer, then they go off and build it. And then they come back and they verify that all the data is doing what it's supposed to be doing. They tie off and then they set you live. And they could set everything to a schedule, right? They could set everything so that you don't really have to think about it. And many DataBlend users sometimes forget that they're using DataBlend because it's running so seamlessly in the background. So I know I kind of answered a ton of questions there, not just implementation, but it all kind of has to do with the implementation process.
Mm-hmm. And a little bit of background for the listeners. So Erik and I got connected because he's done some work for our Intacct clients, and we started working together on a newer prospect. And I'm not going to name any names, but this prospect had a very unique system, and they're evaluating Sage Intacct. So I called Erik in. I said, Erik, help. Let's walk through this together. And Erik, I don't know if you want to kind of explain the process, but you also, you sell it, you do implementations, but you also help on the forefront of the project, making sure solutions can connect.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I'm glad you brought that story up, Emily. Is I mentioned before that I think I mentioned it before, is that the core of our value is our ability to transform, right? Is our ability to transform financial data, right? We do customer to customer and vendor to vendor, but we could also do calculations and things like that. But what expands on that value is our Swiss Army-like way of connecting to systems, right? So we have, I like to say, 4 ways of connecting. We have these API, reminder, application programming interface connections, standard connections that we've pre-built, right? Sage Intacct is a great example of that. Salesforce is another great example of that. HubSpot is another great example of that. Then we also have what we call our database connector, and that gives us the ability to connect to databases that may be hosted on premise or in a cloud, but that data doesn't have an API available to get that data out, right? So we have a way to connect to that and get that data. We also have what we call our SFTP connector, a secure file transfer protocol. And what that does is that gives us the ability to ingest CSV or TXT flat files, basically tabular data from a source system, and ingest that data and then send that off into a target system. And then the last way is what we call and it's a cousin of the API connection. It's a custom script connection via API. And it's something that we've built out of the back end of our tool. And it gives us the ability to extend API connectivity to any system that has an open API. So real quick, when we say open API and closed API, a product or a vendor might have an API. An open API means that anybody can access the API with some documentation and can build to it, right? And so when a system has this open API and has documentation, our team can come in and build a low-cost solution that delivers API connectivity. So between these all 4 types of connections, it really makes it so that traditionally there are systems and there's data that you wouldn't be able to connect to, but because we have these different types of connections, there's very little that we can't connect to today. And so that expands our value. That expands the value of the data flow and expands the value of DataBlend.
Right. So what you're saying is, short answer is, you can connect.
Yeah.
There are
I should have
ways for
just
you
said
to
that.
connect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's not a sales guy, so
Yeah, you're not a sales guy.
he's not a sales guy. Erik, you mentioned something earlier too, kind of how you go about finding these common challenges across the client base, implementing the template approach and being able to roll that out to everybody to essentially cut down on some of the learning curves here. I think you said about 800. What's
Yep.
kind of the client base look like? Just ballpark numbers, size of companies, any specific industries you tend to work in, or what?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we do a lot in the mid-market. We're vertically agnostic, right? What we care about is the Department of Finance and Accounting. We have a healthy experience with not-for-profit organizations, right? And I mentioned Salesforce before. That is a great example, right? Is because we have this robust connection to Salesforce through the API, we could grab custom objects, right? And that's something that isn't really available through a standard connection. And so because of that, nonprofit organizations are ones that usually leverage these more custom endpoints inside of Salesforce, right? And use Salesforce for their donation management, grant management, paying out those kind of funds. And what we can offer is complete automation of all of those objects in and out of Sage Intacct, right? It's extremely robust. They turn out to be some of our bigger projects. They turn out to be very complex, but again, because of our experience of what we've done before, we continue to offer a more streamlined approach to it, and we could also speak knowledgeably to it. Our team can communicate with each other and say, hey, this is an experience I had with customer A. Let's offer this to customer B as well, because it makes their data management a stronger use case. But we also deal a lot, like I mentioned before. I do wear the hat of CAS and SIP practice. We are reaching out. We are growing in our footprint there with, and Matt knows this, with our outsourced accounting practice and offering connectivity for their clients. And that's a select group too, because they like to keep their heads to the ground, right? And focus on a task. But I think once they start to see the automation and the time that it opens up, that is also a growing market for us. So we really there aren't very many limits to who our customer can be and who we reach out to. And we definitely see a lot of success in the IT space and the accounting space are probably our two biggest markets.
So one of the things that I'm hearing is, in the ecosystem for a long time, there was some pretty highly regarded firms that specialized in integration of Intacct and third parties, but really from a custom perspective. And you've kind of taken that away. And so if I think about kind of like development, this is almost like a low code approach to integration for firms that allows them to not have to invest in that deeply customized integration that they might have done just a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? What the traditional sense of integration is that you may have a tool out there, right? But you need someone to use that tool to build the integration, and then you need someone to maintain that integration. And it's very common for it to break, or that's very costly because you need to keep a bucket of hours available for someone to come in and fix the integration. And so with DataBlend, as long as you're paying the subscription, we're maintaining those connections for you. So again, that's peace of mind. You don't have to worry about it. And you hit it on the head again. It's very low code. It's very user friendly. I mentioned our ability to build a script connection before, but that's not the primary, right? We actually will sometimes use a script connector as our first experience with something. And then when we see demand build, we'll take that and create a standard connection for that system, right? And so we've got this refined approach to try new things and then use that to inform how we're going to build out our library and offer more standard connections. But definitely low code and low cost. And again, peace of mind that you don't have to do anything other than pay your subscription to DataBlend.
Well, if it's on Sage paper, it's included in their Sage Intacct subscription.
Right. Well, yes. If it's the DataFlow, then correct. Yes, it's on the Sage. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
A couple times, Erik, you've mentioned, I don't want to say crowdsourcing, ways to solve problems, but you work across a lot of different clients, a lot of different technology platforms and solutions out there. So we've hit it a couple times on our end. When you look at the Sage ecosystem, there's a lot of different players kind of involved in that. Whether it's, you look at the marketplace partners, we have VARs, SIAPs. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on. People like yourself. From a community standpoint, we feel anyways that the Sage ecosystem has a pretty strong community in the sense that everyone's trying to figure out these problems together as opposed to really creating competition. Can you kind of speak to your experience, what you see with Sage versus maybe some of the other platforms out there, kind of from that sense, from that community standpoint sense?
We do have connections to other applications. I will say,
all right, get off. You don't belong on this podcast.
It's Erik. It's the unofficial Sage podcast. So say what you want.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned before, 82% of our customers today use us to connect to Sage Intacct, and I don't think.
But what other solutions are you connecting out to? You mentioned QuickBooks. That was one of the first that you started.
Yeah, we have QBO, we have NetSuite, Xero, Acumatica, or some of the other ones. Definitely little less trafficked. QBO was part of our origin story, right? So it's probably that's fairly robust. But I mentioned before that 82% of our customers are using us to connect to Sage Intacct. That kind of growth would not be possible without there being this synergistic, and God, I'm using that word a lot too. I don't know what's better. But anyway, this kind of community where there's a lot of sharing of knowledge and openness of communication and willingness to solve a problem. But I will say, overall, our list of connections, right, outside of the ERP space, if you look at CRMs and payroll providers and all of that, we have a robust list there too. And it's because we're able to call vendors and say, hey, we have a client that needs to connect to your system. We have a solution. How can you help us connect to your system, right? And so one of the things that is that we're not afraid to start that community, right? We're not afraid to start that conversation on behalf of our other partners and on behalf of our customers in order to make our tool the most powerful it can be and the most robust it can be. But definitely the Sage environment, I'll say, is very one of a kind, and is one that it's great to be a part of. And you just feel it when you go to these events, right? When you go to Transform or any of these, even the smaller niche events that Sage will sometimes host for the SIP community, it's everyone's willing to talk about ideas, challenges, and find solutions to it. And it's one of the things that I love about the industry and working for this company.
One of the
And
questions. Go ahead, Emily.
oh, I was just gonna give a blanket. The next Sage Transform, which is Sage's annual conference, is in June of 2025. So go ahead,
Okay.
Matt.
The question I had is, technically you guys are an iPaaS provider and in a integration platform as a service, I think is what it stands for. And you're not the only player out there. You're not the only player that works with Sage Intacct, just like there's multiple expense management products and AP management products and so forth. What I want to know is, as a firm, as a user, as a potential customer, how do we assess the difference between one iPaaS company and another? What is the differentiators between you know, in your industry? I mean, what is it?
If you've ever queued up a sales question,
Yeah.
That is
Which I
really
love.
good. He's really
Which
going
I
to put the
love
ball
it.
on the tee.
It is
Yeah.
a sales question, but it's also very important when it comes to evaluating for the listeners on what makes the most sense. You know, we may have
Yep.
listeners that are NetSuite users and thinking about Sage, but also have this question on the NetSuite. And I'm going to say maybe DataBlend's not the right answer for them, but they still need to know how to assess the right partner in doing this.
Well, let me address one of the last things you just said first, is that at heart, DataBlend's position is to be the ETL tool for the Office of Finance and Accounting, right? Is that we believe that the Office of Finance and Accounting should not be bogged down by out of the box integration or paying someone a ton to create custom integration. Real quick, I'll talk about a great use case of DataBlend that is agnostic to system, but we'll get system specific here. We have a bunch of customers who are using us to connect Stripe, Salesforce, and Sage Intacct, or similar systems of those brand, right? And what we can do for this customer is a customer makes a donation or a payment on a website through Stripe, and we take the revenue and we send that off to Salesforce. But then you have these credit card fees that are useful because they can be used in the rev rec within Sage Intacct. So traditional integration might say, oh, well, I have to build another custom integration just to bring that over. That's not valuable. Or I have to bring that data all the way around to get it to Sage Intacct. With DataBlend, you don't have to, right? Just because you're using DataBlend to connect to those three systems, we can send the revenue off to Salesforce, but we could take the credit card fees and send that directly to Sage Intacct for the rev rec. But then we continue to bring the revenue from Salesforce right into Sage Intacct too. So we can do what traditional integration can do, but we could also do things that they cannot do. And so that is to say that when you're in the Office of Finance and Accounting and you're thinking about integration, whether it's with Sage Intacct or whether it's with any of these other systems, the value we serve is that we know finance and accounting. Our transformations can do the complex things, the simple things, and the complex things, and we maintain those integrations. So something you want to think about when you're exploring an integration solution is, do I want to pick a system because it's easy to connect, or do I want to pick a system because it has an out-of-the-box integration, or do I want to pick a system because it serves my business use the best, right? Because I'm in construction and this application talks to construction, or I'm in hospitality and this application talks to hospitality. DataBlend believes you shouldn't have to make that choice based off connectivity. You should make that choice based off of what's for your business, and then let us come in and help make those connections. And so that could be an agnostic if you're using Sage or NetSuite or whatever. Is DataBlend can be part of that conversation. One of our strongest positions in the Sage market is that it is by far our most robust connection today, and we have a lot of confidence in what we're doing in and out of that system. Did I answer the whole question there, Matt, or did I miss anything?
I don't know. I don't know.
I think you answered like a question and a half there, which I like.
Yes. Well, and then
you left nothing to kind of
Leave no doubts.
No.
No
yeah,
doubts.
nothing was no.
And then maybe to kind of wrap up this conversation, a piece that I've used a lot from DataBlend is your website, Erik.
Mhm.
So maybe talk to the folks who are like, is DataBlend a good fit for me? What solutions do they integrate with? Can you talk to that graph on your website?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the many things that I love, I was going to call out Matt for a second because like I feel like every time Matt asks a question, he's like, "So I have one question." Every time he asks a question, I was like, "One question," and then
Just one question at that moment.
Right, exactly. But I'm just as guilty of saying, well, the one thing that I love about my job, or one thing, anyway, one of the many things that I love about what I do and who I work for is that we're a very transparent company. And so what Emily was referencing is our website. And if you're exploring integration, if you're thinking about connecting systems and you're not sure, you can go to our website at datablend.com. This is not at all a sales pitch, but we do have a robust demo library available on there. We do have an integration matrix, a connector matrix available on our integrations page where you can click the systems that you're looking to integrate with. And we have a list of everything we have experience connecting with. And it'll show you how we've connected to that system and what data we've moved between that system. So it's a good way to start the thought process and start the conversation of, hey, I'm using system A, B, C, D. Hey, DataBlend's connected to A, B, and C. Maybe it's worth a conversation with them, right? And that could be a really good starting point. And if you have any questions, you could always feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than glad to have a conversation. It doesn't have to be a sales conversation. It can be a question and answer conversation just to help you feel more
Maybe
confident about your
if
process.
you want to book Erik for a wedding, he could help you.
That's
There you
true.
go.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Or if you need a
someone
director,
to
I'm
direct
looking to
your
get
show.
back into the theater. I haven't
There you
directed a
go.
show since COVID, so I need to get back into that market. And we haven't found a way to naturally work it into the conversation. But another thing on my shelf back here is an American flag from my Eagle Scout ceremony when I became an Eagle Scout. So I'm also an Eagle Scout. I don't know whether there's a marketable skill, like if you need someone to tie knots or like start a fire. I'm really good at that. I'm in charge of that whenever we go to the 4th of July. So
we'll figure it out.
You know, Erik, I did hear that Dos Equis, the beer, is looking for their new most interesting man in the world to jump into that. So, you know what? Maybe just throw your hat in the ring. I don't know. That's your choice. I don't know if you have time for that, but at least you'd have a better shot than any of the three of us.
Hey, listen, diapers are expensive. So I'll entertain any kind of extra revenue I can get these days, you know? That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, we won't take up any more of your time, Erik. I appreciate you jumping on and joining us here. Usually to cap these things, I throw out just a horrible dad joke off the top of my head and have these two guess at it wildly, and usually it doesn't go well. They don't get it. So, you're up, Erik.
Yeah, Erik, do you have a dad joke off the cusp?
Our guest is going to throw one out. I love that.
Yeah, he is a dad. He does have a small child, and he's in theater, so he probably does have one.
Oh my goodness. I have a whole dad joke book too. Man, you're putting me on the spot.
I know. If not, we can throw it back to Doug.
Doug, why don't you probably have a more practiced one, so I don't want to.
I don't really have practice ones. I just have an unlimited amount of bad ones.
Okay.
So let's go. All right. What do you call a rude cow?
A rude cow.
I'm working on getting a soundboard in here too, so I can put some like Jeopardy music in.
I'm going with like a moo, something around a moo.
A moo.
Okay. Can't say what I initially thought.
Ooh, or utter. Utter.
I was going to say like utter fool or utter pain.
An utterly bad. I'm just going to say a bad cow.
A rude cow is a beef
rude cow
jerky.
Right there.
Come on.
Come
on. Next time.
was
Next
a good dad
time you'll
joke.
get it. You'll get it. Well, Erik, thank you for joining again. I appreciate it. I will have all your information for the listeners so they can find you and all that fun stuff. I love the fact that you're not a sales guy. That was
Thank you.
fun. You made data and technology sound not overly boring, which is fun. We don't always get that on this podcast, especially with Matt going into the weeds on his stuff.
Doug,
But
jeez.
no, it's too much knowledge. You just
Well,
have
Matt's
too
an
much
idea
knowledge,
guy.
Matt.
Matt just has all these ideas, and you just,
Yeah,
And-
Eric got a little bit of that experience when we were in Boston. Just the idea flow.
Yeah, and you
It's
did let
good.
Wicked fly a few times. I don't know if you heard that one. Yeah,
Did I let
you
it
did
fly,
throw
or did Matt
Wicked
let it
out.
fly?
Yeah, no, you did, Eric, a couple
Yeah,
times.
I
Wicked,
know.
yeah.
the Queens and me and my friends from Queens would probably be really mad at me, but 2 years in New Hampshire, it's starting to rub off. I can't help it.
I love it, Eric. We've wasted enough of your life here today.
This
No,
has
thank
not been a
you.
waste. This has been a phenomenal experience. I really appreciate you guys. Excited to be on the podcast. Congratulations on it, and thank you for having me as one of your first guests. And I'll be glad to come back anytime.
The first guest.
The first.
first.
Guest. Oh,
Yes.
Could you send me a trophy? I want to put that next to those over there. First
Yeah, well,
guest.
well, it's in the mail. It's in the mail. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Eric. Thanks for the time, my friend, and we'll be talking to you soon.